the last drop. Are you gonna blow your head off? Take good aim and don't forget to duck. Life sucks every Monday and all the way to Sunday, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't care how you're doing, what's up or how's it hanging. I'd like to buy this world one last drink. Life sucks all of the time, stick it up your sunshine, and then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day.
Welcome to The Crazy Life, everybody. I'm Jen, your hostess. And with me, as always, is Bryan and Henno. Hi, guys.
Howdy.
Hello.
Yes, and Henno, you happen to not be in your domicile right now, correct? Are you out having fun?
I am. Yeah, I am. I'm having a little mini vacation in Boise right now.
Nice. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, literally, I'm sure it's very cool there, huh?
It is, yeah, well, it's warmer here than in Haley, though.
Nice.
I don't have to have a jacket on. But yeah, I came down here to see Grace Potter in concert and go see some movies and do some shopping and hang out with a friend from Atlanta. So it's been fun.
Yeah, sounds like a great time.
Oh, and buy readers. I have officially bought readers.
Oh boy.
Nice.
For my eyesight. I'm just starting. That's my win for the week. Just accepting.
Right. You know, it's funny though. It's a really difficult step for a lot of people because of the vanity angle of that. You know, it's you know, they can't accept that they have to wear glasses of any type or especially readers because, you know, they tie them with being old or what have you. And it's not. It's just, you know, it's just a tool you need. You know, who cares? You know?
Yeah.
As long as you're not using a beaded chain to hold on to them around your neck.
No, even if you do, bedazzle that thing. Own it. Who cares?
I have one of my mentors has the ones that they split in the front. Andy has the chain, and he wears it proudly.
Yeah.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
See, what you need to do is you need to get ones with, like, little skulls and stuff all over them so that they're, like, you know, heavy metal readers and a reader's chain.
Yes.
Yeah, my boss does that in a way. He'll only wear the readers. He has readers that are part of the safety glasses. So This way it looks like he's really into doing something because he's got the safety glasses on.
Ah, right.
The reality is he's just trying to read.
Yeah, I've just owned the fact because I've supposed to wear glasses my entire life, and for pretty much junior high and high school, I refused to wear them. And ever since I got in college, I should say, and once I got out of college and I started working full-time and staring at a computer all the time, I'm like, you know what? I'm just owning the fact that I need glasses, and I'm going to wear them like I'm supposed to.
Yep.
Headaches aren't cool. I don't care how bad glasses can look at times. It doesn't take away the fact that headaches suck, and headaches are not fun, and they're not cool. So I might as well wear my glasses and wear them proudly.
Yep. Yeah, and it's like
I had my.
Good.
I said I got my new contact prescription this week, and so my eyesight has got worse last year, and so I got the new prescription of contacts on like Tuesday or Wednesday, and I put them in, and of course they corrected my eyesight better, so my reading got more difficult. So I was like, okay, let's just face reality here.
Yep. Yeah. It's like, you know, I've been wearing glasses since, man, I don't know, I was 4 or so. I think I was wearing them before I was in school. And, you know, obviously, like, you know, when I was a kid, it wasn't cool to have glasses. So, I've worn them so long that, I went through being picked on because of them to where, then growing into like in high school where no one cared, and then to the point that now it's cool. And now if you get a pair of glasses, people actually compliment you on the glasses, So I've seen the whole rainbow of glasses wearing. And now it's like, my left eye, I have a lazy eye, and my right eye, I just need a really very slight prescription in, to the point that the doctors are like, you don't even really need one, So I could just wear a contact in my left eye, to where I could just get a contact prescription and get two of the same one and basically get double value out of it, just get two and just, use them in my left eye. But I was like, I've been wearing glasses so long now, there's no reason for me to do it. I'm so comfortable with them. I don't have a reason for it, So yeah, it's, like I said, every time I see somebody, my sister, when she, finally broke down and, gave in to the readers, for her, it was a vanity thing. And I was like, look, you need them. You enjoy reading. I was like, which would you rather do? Give up reading or just wear these glasses? I mean, come on, that's silly. So I'm glad I'm glad you surrendered to it rather than getting drug along.
Well, that's the thing that I've been working on so much in my life on everything else. Is like, this is my age. This is who I am.
Yeah.
These are my limitations. This is, I've learned to accept so many. It's, we've talked about this so much even on this show, where it's like, it's wild what we can easily accept and the things that we have a difficult time accepting.
Yeah.
and I'm like, screw it. I'm going to accept my age, and I'm going to accept the limitations that I have, and I'm just going to be freaking happy.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's a great place to be.
Yeah.
And, you should be very proud of that. And I completely understand why you consider that your win.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
That's a big win.
Yep.
How was the rest of your week?
It's interesting that honestly, I used to fight this thing called aging. You know what I mean? Like it was something like where I was always looking at, oh yeah, but I look younger. Oh, but people think I look younger. Oh, but people think I look younger. And now it's just like, who the hell cares? It's just not even worth it anymore. It's like,
Yeah.
this is who I am. And, it's like this week, I hurt my neck one day doing something at work, and it was something that, it's like, okay, learn your lessons. I know, I could have done it differently and not hurt myself. But as soon as I did, it was like, okay, let's take care. Let's, do, this is a common injury of mine, and
Yeah.
What I love about having, the opportunity to come onto the Crazy Life and talk about my week, whether it's a behavioral thing, a physical thing, or whatever it is, it's always a reminder that I have the opportunity to change how I do things if I'm willing to engage it.
Yeah.
I'm willing to, like being in Boise this weekend. I have nothing to do with music right now, and it's crazy for me to think about how obsessive I can be. There, I use the crazy word, but I like how my mind. It's so easy for me to forget how obsessive I can become, and that I need to give myself opportunities to walk away from things for a while.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I don't realize it. I just hate the fact that pain is my touchstone of growth sometimes. Because I'm trying. That's the thing I think I want to change the most in my life. And I get reminders every week, and I get to share about it. Like right now, is to say, no, I don't want pain to be my touchstone of growth. I want growth to happen in on the other side of it.
Yeah, I don't think you're alone in that journey, though. I think that, many people are, that they have to, experience some sort of pain to go, maybe I should change here.
Yeah, and I think, like, for years and years, I'd never liked the feeling of being like the pinball in the machine, just having no control and bouncing around everywhere. but I honestly didn't know how to do it differently. So it was always, pain was the touchstone of growth, because it was like that life thing occurred, and the ups and the downs, and you're all this stuff where you're like I don't, everything, life's going good, why should I change anything? Well, now I go, life's going good, now's the opportunity to change something.
Yeah. It's like coasting along in the water, and you're like, life's good, I'm not going to change anything. And then you realize you're like way out in the ocean somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like, how am I going to get back?
Well, I had some interesting pain points this week that taught me about surrendering myself. And it's a very difficult thing for me to do, because I'm a person that loves to be in control. And I like to know what's going to happen, and I'm very much in control of everything. I try to be anyways. And even if I'm making decisions on the fly, it's like I'm still making them. They're still my decisions, in me, And a couple things happened that were outside my comfort zone, and I didn't have much control. And I think the best, I'm not going to go too much into detail because some of it's kind of personal stuff, but I think a perfect analogy was what happened. I was on vacation with my family this week, and my brother loves roller coasters. So we ended up going to a place called Busch Gardens in Florida, and there's their new ride. I don't do roller coasters because it messes up my head and makes me dizzy and nauseous and stuff. But there's a ride that he said, and my fiance agreed with him, and they said, oh, it's just like the Demon Drop at Cedar Point, which is another place nearby us here that's in Ohio. And basically, it just goes straight up in the air, and it drops you down really fast. They're like, it's just like the Demon Drop, except really tall. I'm like, okay, I don't want to do this because I have a fear of heights, but all right, I'll do this with you. So I get on it with my brother, and I should have known better when my fiance said, no, that's okay, I'll hold the stuff, you guys go. I should have known better, but I didn't. I'm like, all right, whatever. So we get on this thing, and you get hooked in with, this major harness and stuff. And we start going up, and my fear of heights starts really taking control. And I'm like, all right. And I'm doing my deep breathing. I'm using all my tools to keep myself calm and keep myself centered. And I'm like, all right, I can do this. Talking myself through it. We get to the top, incredibly scary. Then all of a sudden, we start leaning forward till I'm 90 degrees to the ground. I'm facing the ground. And keep in mind, I'm so far up, I can see my car in the parking lot that we had to take a tram to get to the park. So, incredibly high in the air, facing the ground, and all I can think to say is, you didn't tell me this part. To which my brother laughingly replies, I didn't? My bad. Yeah. So, then it drops you, and you go hurtling face first towards the concrete. Where, of course, you stop in time and stuff, and they tip you up right and stuff. But that was my first lesson in surrendering. And at some point, you just have to let go and go with the flow. That you can't. There was nothing I could do. I couldn't say, "Let's get off."
Yeah.
Let me off or anything like that.
Yeah.
I had to go through it. As painful as it was for me with my fears and stuff, I had to go through it. And I'm glad afterwards I made it through it and stuff. And, I could have been really upset and mad at the two of them for trickery, but I didn't. I laughed it off, and I said, you know what, it was a harmless prank that, they just pulled on me, and I just kind of have to laugh it off and let it go. And I did, and I just laughed it off, let it go, and we had a great time. But that kind of just really was an aha for me in a way that it almost is an analogy for other things in my life, where it's like, sometimes when you're hurling to the ground, you have to trust your harness, and you have to trust that somebody else, and that you're going to stop in time, whether it's yourself or somebody else is going to stop you in time, because quite frankly, you can't control everything yourself. You have to just let go sometimes and just let life happen. So it was very interesting thing. But that was my victory is letting go and just letting things happen and not having to be in control. I mean, the other thing this week, since we were on vacation, is I didn't drive at all. I didn't make very many decisions. I kind of just went along with things and let other people just control the day and control what we're doing and stuff. And so it was really a good, I think, reminder to myself to just kind of let it go. So, but that was my week. So I don't know. Brian, how was your week?
Yeah, my week started off really bad, but I had a hard drive fail on my computer, like as I was attempting to upload Salty Language to the server last week, and so I've gotten that all squared away. But then Monday I had therapy, and I woke up feeling like because again I'm still adjusting to the new meds I'm on, so I woke up feeling basically like I was in like the middle of a really bad flu. And yeah, so I called and canceled my appointment because I just felt horrible. And I'm like, I need to reschedule, and I go, well, the girl who does that's not here, she's on lunch, she'll have to call you back. All right, fine. I still have not heard back, and that was Monday. I called him on Friday and said, hey, I need to reschedule my therapy, and she's at lunch. And I'm like, okay, well, can you have her call me back? I'm like, because see, how therapy works is I kind of need to go, and they're like, well, if you're having an emergency, I'm like, no, it's not an emergency, but I really, I need to set this up. I don't want this to be 3-4 weeks between my visits, and so plus it's it's kind of frustrating when you're feeling kind of minimized by them, and so whatever. Yeah, they never call back, so that kind of angers me a little bit. But it was the hard drive thing. It was interesting because I definitely found my win for the week in that, which was, as soon as it happened, I just sat here as soon as I realized that it was what it was, because, the computer was run really slow. I restarted it, and when I went to restart it, there's a status bar. It got about 2/3 of the way, and then the computer shut down. And I was like, oh, man, because I kind of had a feeling of what it was, because I've had it happen before. Restarted it one more time, it did it again, and I was like, oh boy. I looked it up on my phone, and sure enough, it was, a failing hard drive. And, they say right then, don't keep doing it because you could, completely ruin the hard drive, whereas it might still be salvageable. You might be able to recover data from it. And I'm sitting there, and I'm just like, man, the timing of this, because, we're supposed to go to Chicago for C2E2 in a month, and I'm going, man, to get this fixed is going to just completely sap everything I've saved. And the timing is awful, and just sat here and just hung my head, and honestly, the first thing I did was just go, of course, of course this happens now, and then I stopped and was like, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. I'm not going to go into worst case scenario mode. I'm not going to go into this because it's a hard drive. It's not a motherboard, The computer's not ruined. A hard drive is ruined, And it's like, of the three scenarios it could have been, it was the middle scenario. It wasn't the best case scenario. It wasn't the worst case scenario. It was a middle ground. So I was like, I'm not going to let myself go down and act like it's the worst case scenario, that this thing is completely shot and forever lost and all this. It's just that it's a setback, and with no real income, it's a pretty major setback, but it's not a total setback for me, and I'm not going to let it become a major setback. So that that would be my win for the week, even though it's still it's a very strong kick in the beans because I've lost some stuff for the podcasts and stuff at the moment, and potentially it still could be a bigger loss down the road because there may be things that I haven't thought of that I may have lost, like pictures or things that I can't recover that maybe I, wanted, but that's, I can't do anything about those things. If I've lost stuff, it's already lost.
Yep. And you can't continue to worry about it because it's not going to do anything any good.
Right. Right.
So no, that's awesome. That is a huge thing for you.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely a huge win. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, well, what we're going to talk about today is Hanno came up with this, and I think it's a great topic. That it is. Make sure I get this right. It's CTE. Now, CTE, for those who are not familiar with what it is chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Encephalopathy. So, yeah, CTE.
Easy for you to say, right?
Exactly. Easy for you to say. That's why it's going by CTE.
Encephalopathy. Encephalopathy, like a pathy, like a pathology.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Encephalopathy. Yeah. Oh God, it's a tough one.
Encephalopathy.
There you go.
Okay. But so what this is they're finding it specifically in athletes, but not specifically in people who have had multiple concussions. And it's progressive tauropathy after repeated head injury is what they're describing it as. Now, the reason why we're talking about this is because a lot of the symptoms can roll over into the same symptoms as a lot of mental illnesses. And since it is something in the brain, a trauma to the brain, that's causing it, and it's not necessarily the same thing, but it's close enough that I think it's important for us to talk about. And Hanno, like I said, Hanno brought this up, and definitely it's a good topic.
Yeah. I had first heard about this a long time ago because, and I know, Jen, you should remember this, because remember years ago there was a guy on WWE Tough Enough called named Chris Nowinski. Mm-hmm. He was a wrestler, and I don't remember I think he was out of Harvard, and he did really well in there. He got a contract with WWE, and, as he started rising up their ranks, he got concussion after concussion, and to where he couldn't wrestle anymore. And afterwards, he started devoting himself to researching concussions and their effects on people in the long term. And I should have looked this up, and I didn't. He got together with a doctor who was an expert in the fields of this, a neurologist of some sort, I'm assuming, and they started working on the study of this, and they basically started, I believe they're the ones that really started finding CTE and started a lot of this research. And, to where they got a lot of athletes now, like especially football players, once they're deceased, to, their families to donate the brains, so that they could study the trauma on their brains, and they're finding a lot of these players have had, like these ones that have died from where they've killed themselves, or they've died from or have had a history of depression or that of the like, and they're finding a lot of the CTE in a lot of these guys.
Exactly. No, some of the symptoms include deterioration in attention, concentration, and memory, disorientation, confusion, dizziness, headaches, lack of insight, poor judgment, overt dementia, slowed muscular movements, a staggered gait, impeded speech, tremors, vertigo, and deafness. These are the initial symptoms from stage 1. The individual may progress through 3 stages of the disease. Stage 1 begins with affective disturbances and psychotic symptoms. And then as the disease progresses to stage 2, the individual may suffer from social instability, erratic behavior, memory loss, initial symptoms of Parkinson's disease. Now, this is quite scary. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
You know, it definitely sheds another light on sports injuries and injuries in general in our heads and how important it is to protect our heads and our brains.
Yeah, and these things don't tend to show, like a lot of these athletes, they don't tend to see these until years after they're done. But there are some that do. Like one that stands out for me is there's a defenseman in the NHL named Chris Pronger, who's of his era one of the best defensemen. And he had a bunch of concussions. And after he retired, he still, to this day, is having all sorts of issues with, post-concussion syndrome and stuff. And, he's incredibly worried. I can't remember when it was a few years ago that, I can't remember if it was Sports Illustrated or ESPN Magazine did a whole profile on him. And he described all the things he's still going through. And from what I was reading the other day, it sounds like he's still going through, and he's been retired for I don't know how many years now, and he retired a little early, because of these things, and again, playing these sports, you're at risk for injury. They know, head trauma is there and all this, but I don't think a lot of these players realize that because these concussion things have not been at the forefront until the last, 10 years. You're really starting to see this research and stuff come to the forefront. And, you're seeing the depression and stuff tied to it, that now they're starting to really look at, these players that are potentially killing themselves or suffering through some of this other stuff that's tied to these head injuries, or potentially tied to these head injuries. And now it's becoming a major concern.
Go ahead, Kenna.
I was just going to say, what was wild is, we talked about David Mira last week.
Yeah.
And there were reports on the 5th of February that they're looking into this, that maybe he was suffering from CTE, because one of the things that I was reading about is that there's real impulsive behavior tied to this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that what happened with him was, people had seen him just a couple hours beforehand and had conversations with him, normal conversations, and that seemed like an impulsive thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and sorry, go ahead, Jen.
Funny because it's a lot of the symptoms can cross over into the symptoms of mania.
Yep.
And that's in the whole lack of judgment, impulsiveness, and it's interesting because I describe mania when I'm in mania is the best adrenaline rush high that you could ever have. And my doctor and I talked about it. He said it's not unlike the adrenaline rush that people get for doing extreme sports or any of that extreme stuff. And it makes me wonder if some of the drive for that adrenaline rush may have contributed as well, might be a contribution to the whole CTE as well as the actual traumas itself. Like maybe it's a predisposed personality type, because they all seem to have that in common.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, there's it's really strange to see all that with these guys, because we talked over on Salty Language about that too. About with like Dave Mira and stuff about the head injuries. Because guys that do the BMX stuff, they wipe out a lot. you know, and he's from the era that was that predates the foam pits, you know, like a lot of these guys now practice in those foam pits to, you know, they do their trick a million times in those foam pits before they ever really, you know, do it for safety reasons, you know, that way you're less likely to get, you know, break anything, get a concussion, whatever. And he was probably doing a lot of stuff, you know, as a, you know, teenager just out in the park, you know, and probably who knows how many he had, or, you know, like this week on WWE had Bryan, well, his wrestling name was Daniel Bryan. He had to retire because of concussions, because he's had, and he doesn't even know how many he's had in his career, but he was telling how he has seizures because of a lesion on his brain. From the concussions he's had, and that how dangerous it would be for him to continue to wrestle because it would change, you know, could threaten the quality of his life. And he's 35, you know, Dave Miro was what, 41, 42? I can't remember, something like that.
41.
41. Yeah. Just, it's young, you know, but if you suffer a lot of these, it can dramatically change your, and we don't know on Dave Mira. They're looking into it, but, you know, it's amazing how these things can change, you know, even taking it even one step in, it's like, you know, we know our friend Neil over at the, you know, Dark Angels and Pretty Freaks podcast has talked openly about his head injuries and how it's changed him. You know, how he's changed his behaviors because he's afraid of down the road what this could do to him if he suffers more head trauma. You know, I'm glad there's this stuff coming out because hopefully it'll help people kind of be a little more weary of, you know, like his are a little different. He's not just being crazy. His are just unfortunate accidents, but you know, it's, yeah.
Now, there is hope, which is really great, because in 2013, up until that point, the only real way to tell if someone had CTE was after they had passed away and examining their brains. Now, a study done in 2013 was done on former NFL players via scanning that uses low doses of radioactivity. And they were able to find 5 former NFL players that showed signs of CTE. So the benefit is that they're able to start noticing early. Now, one of the problems with CTE cases is that some of them end in suicide. Suicides are often precipitous without warning, said neurosurgeon Julian Bales, a co-author of the report and co-director of the North Shore Neurological Institute in Evanston. So unfortunately, that's how we usually have found out about it. Now, being able to diagnose it early really can help in multiple ways. This article was from USA Today, by the way, from January 23rd, 2013. A study gives hope for brain disease treatments. And the other one that I was reading from is helmetsmash.com, Living with Brain Injury. And it's really interesting to me to see, because once you get them diagnosed, A, they can start coming up with treatments. But B, understanding what's going on with you is a huge thing. I mean, I think we've all been there in situations in our lives where we know something's not right, but we can't pinpoint it. And I can't imagine how relieving it's got to be for some of these guys to say, okay, here's a name to what's going on with me. Here's the expectations of what I can expect. Here's what I can watch out for. And for them, the whole family, them and their loved ones, can all say, okay, let's work on this together and keep an eye on each other. So the sudden suicides may become less frequent and things along those lines. So I think that is a huge hope on the horizons. And that was 2013. So who knows where they're at now? I haven't been able to find anything more recent than that at this moment. But who knows where they're at now in 2016, 3 years later. Hopefully they've progressed even further.
Yeah, and the thing that was scariest to me, is just that whole idea of, okay, there's no way to diagnose this. So then how does, how do you know? And I thought, well, okay, if you're communicating with people around you, and Neil was the one that really, really kind of put this into my head, like, okay, he is consciously aware that this is a potential for people that have had concussions. So now he's checking himself on a regular basis to say, okay, am I having any thoughts? Am I feeling anything that's very different? And he's sharing it. And unless you have that as part of, your whatever you want to call it, normal routine, that if you have somebody in your life that you can share, like, hey, I've been thinking things that I don't usually think, or I've been feeling things I usually don't feel. And this applies to more than just this disease. I mean, there are people all the time that have, they end up with like tumors in their brain, or even just as much as a hormonal thing or a medication or something that has changed. If we don't have that check and balance of somebody that we can talk to and say, someone that you're comfortable saying is like, hey, I actually had a really, I had a suicidal thought the other day, and I've never felt like that. That's important to have this level of communication somewhere in our lives, where you can say, okay, well, has anything changed?
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, it's no wonder that these things happen. That you could be, there's many of us that many people aren't comfortable sharing their inner thoughts and feelings with others.
Yeah. And, and that's just the average person. Now, if you take that and apply that to an athlete, you're asking to basically overcome two stigmas, because you're asking them to overcome, because you never want to admit weakness, i.e. admit you have a concussion. And you don't want to open up about your feelings because, you're a man, you don't, whatever, you don't do that kind of thing. So you're asking them to overcome two things, or not overcome, but you're asking them to do that. And you're absolutely right, though. That is exactly what needs to happen, and I love that you see, like, in the NFL and stuff, you're seeing, you see teams now, like there's doctors on the field and they still screw up, but they're, doctors on the field that the teams cannot override. If that doctor says, hey, I think that guy has a concussion, they take him off the field and they put him through a protocol, and the teams cannot go, hey, I think he's okay. The team they cannot override that doctor, and I love that, that's a great step in the right direction, But, and, sometimes you'll see a team take a guy's helmet, to protect the guy, because, competitors, they're going to, I'm fine. I can go back in. Okay, here's your helmet. Get back in there. That's the way team play, especially when millions of dollars are at stake. But you're totally right, though. It's hard, from just me with depression, it was tough to tell people, hey, I'm not feeling right, I need help or whatever. I can't imagine like that. And, Neil is the kind of guy that would, and it's awesome that he does that. And it would be great if a lot of people would take a good example from him, because that is a great, a great way of doing things, that to take personal inventory and say, hey, something isn't right here. And I'm on this list. I've had a lot of brain trauma. I need to be aware of these things. It's kind of like if you have, how it, like if your doctor goes, hey, what's your family history for this? And you go, well, my dad had a heart attack, my mom had a heart attack, and well, then we're going to keep an eye on you. And if you fall into certain categories, we're going to really keep an eye on you. It's a similar idea,
Yeah, and we already have a hard enough time doing it with physical issues, like especially men, because
Yeah.
women are a lot more used to having regular checkups in ways that men aren't. And
Yeah.
like for Amanda, that's why the fun Deadpool thing for testicular cancer, it's
Yeah.
like it was hilarious, but it was so right. It's like, hey, get to know that part of you, and yet that is something we're more likely to do. We're more likely to get in touch with our bodies and go, hey, you know what? There's something that's changed here. But how many of us have ever had anyone say that to about our thoughts? I never heard that. No one ever said, that was never taught to me in any way, until I had to have pain as a touchstone of growth,
Right.
And then I was taught this idea of like, hey, you aren't your thoughts and feelings, so express them. It doesn't define you. But up till that point, I kind of felt like it did.
Yeah. Right.
And they can be indicators for many different issues, physical, emotional, mental, so many different ways. And yet, like you said, you're not supposed to display weakness. I'm supposed to be tip top. How you doing? Oh, I'm 100%, coach.
Yeah.
Or at work, I'm 100%. I'm there. And we have these pressures put on us to not be, to perform basically whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, in the other aspect of things is just like mental illness, brain injury and traumas and stuff, they thrive off of isolation. They want you to isolate yourself.
Yeah. Well,
that's the drive. That's the driving force behind them. Isolation is you are feeding the disease.
Well, similar with what you said earlier is when you get a significant brain trauma, typically, like you get a trauma, it basically then you suffer concussion, you have a concussion. You then, as if you have major ones, you essentially have you can have a PTSD, which can, along with it, bring depression, and and once you've had a trauma to your brain, it alters your brain. Your brain may not function correctly, so it can manifest into various mental illnesses. Essentially, you know what I mean? It's like you kind of get this from one can be the other easily. So. It makes perfect sense that they behave similarly because essentially it is the same thing, Yeah. And, so you shouldn't, it's just, I can't, it blows my mind how, I've watched sports for years and years and years. And, I remember listening to, ESPN has a radio show called Mike and Mike. And Mike Golick, who used to play in the NFL, talks about how when he was a young player, you get your bell rung. They hand you a handful of aspirin and say, get back out there, basically. And it's like, oh my God, I can't imagine, because you look at it through today's eyes and you're just like, it's mind boggling, like how do you go, wow, you just suffered brain trauma. Here's some Tylenol, get back out there,
And having your bell rung is such a cute euphemism for something so dangerous.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's almost to the point where I don't even want to use that terminology anymore because it is. It's like, oh, that's so cute. You got your bell rung. Yeah. No.
Shake the cobwebs loose. Get back out there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's like, no. Your brain is very, very important.
Yeah.
You don't get shot and told to walk off.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Exactly, but that's what it was. That's the mentality of sports that they have years and years of that garbage to overcome. Because it's that mentality of you don't show weakness because if you do, someone else takes your job. Like if you show any weakness, the coach replaces you. That's how it is. And it's the sad truth of the sport. And you know, no one wants to get replaced, so they don't show, you know, I don't know how many times I've heard athletes after they retired say, yeah, I probably had more concussions than I ever told the coaches about. And it's like, that's not funny. That's not cute, dude. It's like 10 years from now, when you can't remember your kids' names, that's not going to be hilarious, you know?
Right.
Like, you know, but that's the culture that needs to be changed, and that's got to get changed from like Pop Warner little kid football all the way up, you know.
No, it needs to get changed from how we raise our men.
Also that,
and,
yeah.
Yeah, and how we raise our boys.
Yeah.
And, you know, from day one, we need to make sure that they understand, you know, like to Heno's point, which is a very good point, which is boys and men are raised not to share their feelings, because, you know, men don't have feelings. Men are men. We're manly men, you know, or they are manly men, because I'm not one of them. But, you know, that has to stop. It is not a sign of weakness to share emotions or share thoughts that are going on inside your head. It's not a sign of weakness. It's in fact a sign of strength, that you're able to put yourself out there, and you were able to put yourself on Front Street and are able to allow people to criticize or even make fun of. You know, you have to be incredibly strong to put yourself out there that way, and that's how it needs to be viewed. It's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength.
Yeah, I learned this from guys in sobriety who grew up in those households where you were allowed two emotions, basically joy at your own accomplishments or anger, and that was it. Because if you talked about having feelings for a girl, they made fun of you. If you walked in and felt like, you know, you had somebody, you know, you had a hard day or whatever, you know, dad told you to, you know, suck it up, buttercup, you know, and that was it. And so they were honestly, you're allowed the idea of getting stoked or being pissed off. And that was it.
Yeah.
That was the range of male emotion that is allowed. And that's where you're like, okay, so that's your tribe. That is what your tribe has told you that you get to feel.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's say you feel something different. Who do you confide in? And that's when you better hope that you have a friend that is outside of your tribe, or a parent, you know, like, and you're just using Neil as an example. I know his relationship with his family, with his mother, is such that he could go to her and talk to her about anything. There is zero judgment there. And, you know, and I feel like I'm fortunate in that regard too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not that, and it's not so much that person is going to have a solution for me, but I know there is a place where I can talk to someone, I can open myself up, and there are willing ears to listen.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what's important here. And I think that's what would actually be, you know, could save some people that are going through CTE or, you know, whatever it is, because we all have it's very easy to become stuck in the echo chamber, you know, to become, you know, in a world where everybody agrees with us, and we don't want to engage with people with a differing opinion, and so we kind of put ourselves in a bubble of, and this is just in general life, you know, it's a natural thing to associate with those, but you know, that agree with you, but I find that it's nice to have people that don't agree with me, so that I feel like there is somebody out there that's going to check me.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, and that's why for myself to have a coach or a mentor or somebody that on a weekly basis that I just touch base with, hey, how are things? You know, like, well, you know, things are good, but, you know, and maybe bring up one small issue that came up. And that I realized now is, like you said, these are now strengths for me, but it's taken a lot of work to get to that point.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And having people surrounding you that are your support system is immeasurable help. You know, just the other day, my fiance, when I was talking with you guys about how I went through a mania, and a period of mania. And I mentioned to him later, I'm like, yeah, I realized in hindsight that I was going through mania. He's like, oh, you didn't know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no. He's like, oh, I could have told you that. I'm like, yeah, you kind of need to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of want that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, he didn't understand because I thought I was clear with the rules, and obviously I was not. But I told him, I'm like, yeah, you see a change in me that is dramatic and something that you deem is not the most healthy. You owe it to me. Please bring it to me, because a lot of times when you're in the moment, you don't know what's the right thing, or you don't know what you're going through, and only in hindsight can you guess. So if I'm in a moment, if I'm doing something that seems kind of off the wall or it doesn't seem in my usual stream of things, I said, yes, please bring it up. Please, mention it to me and we can talk about it, and I can let you know where I'm at and kind of gut check me. Yeah. Because there's the two sides,
Right.
We need our partners and our families and our loved ones and our support systems to gut check us, but we also need to be able to have them there so that we can unload our what's going on inside of us. Yeah. So it's a two partner, or a two-sided
a two-way street
therapy, basically.
Yeah.
Two-street.
Well, yeah.
Well, and
permission is somewhere in there, and that's what you really nailed, is that when we give the people around us permission to do that, is we are setting ourselves up for the chance to catch this in the future. If we said, hey, if you ever, and once again, this goes with this whole thing about, changing the rules. It's like, hey, I'm about to go through some things, like Bryan, you've talked about this, like, hey, I'm, trying some new medicines or whatever. If you start thinking that I'm acting funny, please tell me. I'm going to come out and say, hey, are you feeling all right now? Or I'm noticing this. And that's something that I've learned over the last couple of years, especially, I have people in my life that are extremely observant. But one of the reasons they're extremely observant is they tend to be a little more introverted, and so they notice stuff. But because they're a little more introverted, they're the least likely to say, hey, Hanno, you might, I noticed some things are a little different with you. And then, but I've given them permission as a friend or as part of my tribe, like, hey, if I ever, whatever it is, if you think I'm acting strangely, if something's wrong, please say something. Don't be afraid ever.
For sure.
Try to be tactful, folks. If you're gut checking someone, try to be tactful at least about it. And do not say, have you taken your meds?
Yeah.
Is it that's kind of a no-no. You don't want to go there.
Well,
but you can, definitely talk about it, definitely open that conversation, and make sure that they know that you notice something is a little bit off.
Well, yeah, and that's really important, like with this topic especially, because I would I don't want to assume, but I guess I'll just word it that way. I would assume a lot of the people who are going to, like, if they've suffered multiple head traumas, and you're afraid, or you're worried that they may be at risk for like CTE kind of a thing. Read up on brain traumas. Be aware of what to look for in post-concussion syndromes. Look for things that lead to, these behaviors that, like we were saying, the impulsive behaviors and the stuff Jen mentioned when, she was saying the stuff. Look for things that are out of the ordinary. Educate yourself so that you can help maybe catch them if they're behaving abnormally, because, that might help, ward off something that you may help them before they get into a really bad spot, that may be the best thing you could do there too, is just educate yourself. That way you're ahead of the game,
Absolutely.
No different than if you were, with somebody and they, your partner, and then they suffer some sort of a disease or something, you'd educate yourself to help them treat it or something like that. Or if they were going through cancer, you'd learn, what the side effects of chemo or something are, to, so you know what road is ahead of you. Do that kind of thing. Just educate yourself so that you can, be the best piece of a support team you can be along with them, because they may not realize when they're going to need somebody, kind of a situation,
Yeah, and that's family history and those things. You're right. We talk about this so much at doctors' offices. We don't always talk about mental health issues in our families or things like that. Like saying, hey, my mother was bipolar or suffered from schizophrenia or things like that. Like, that's one of the things with my boss. I know that his mother, she committed suicide as a direct result of schizophrenia. So he has mental health issues in his family. And I'm glad I know about that. I'm glad he shared that with me, because it at least gives me awareness, into that, just as much as I know my father's. And it's funny, like, I go to the doctor and they ask my family's medical history, but no one's ever asked me my family's mental health history.
Oh, really? Now, see, that's interesting. Now, the place I go, and I think it's because they not only have doctors, but there's also, in the same place, there's a mental health, they have mental health doctors also.
Clinic,
They actually, in order to keep their accreditation, at least once a year, have to have you fill out a form asking a bunch of questions about, like, in the last so much time, have you been depressed, blah, blah, blah. And then they also ask you a couple questions about, is there any family depression, bipolar or whatever. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's just really, this whole conversation is just making me, is a great reminder for me that the more open I am with even people around me, that of what's going on in my life, how I'm feeling, where I'm at, I'm basically giving myself a chance to by bringing other people in, that I'm not going to go down, rabbit holes I've gone down before.
Right.
And this is really important. And it's easy for us to talk about, like, hey, I'm going through a tough time right now. I could use some friends to be around me. And everyone goes, yeah, we know you're going through a hard time. We'll be there for you. But it's something else to say, hey, you know what? Life's going really good right now. I hope that you'll always still be around me. You know how that is? Like, when life gets good, we're suddenly like, yeah, I'm good. I don't need anybody. And kind of in reality, when life is good, that's all, it doesn't matter whether you're at a low point or at a high point. These are all useful tools for us.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're actually even more important when we're doing well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because a lot of times when you're doing well, the last thing that you're thinking about is checking yourself.
Yeah. And it's like, I'm thinking about it right now, and your friends are the least likely to really check it. I mean, how many of us have looked at, it's this whole thing about, like, comparing my, insides with somebody's outsides or whatever it is. I look at somebody and I go, wow, they seem like life is really good to them. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Right.
I have no idea what's going on in their mind. And that was the sad thing with David Mira is, friends who had just seen him before, and they're like, hey, everything seems like it's going well.
Yeah.
And they're having normal conversations, and then 2 hours later, and it's like, wow, what happened?
On that same note, I was listening to there's a pro wrestler that has a podcast named Colt Cabana, and he had a comedian friend of his named Marty DeRosa on, and Marty has a podcast called Wrestling with Depression. And when he was on Colt's podcast, Colt was like, I never asked you. He's like, you have this podcast where you talk about your depression. He's like, but whenever we hang out, he's like, I don't know. He's like, you just seem like you, he's like, you never seem like down. And Marty was like, yeah, but what you don't see is me the 2 days before,
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yes, like that exactly, it's like me and Tony. Like, Tony probably, like, he doesn't really see me Like, when we hang out, I'm pretty much me, I'm whatever.
Yeah.
But the 2 days before, I'm staying in bed until 10 o'clock at night, or I'm like, man, I don't really feel like going out Saturday, so maybe I'll do this, and trying to come up with ways out of it, and like, no, I'm not going to do, fighting with myself and, all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing. So when you see me, it's like, hey, it's Bryan. He didn't seem that down. I don't understand what his problem is. It's the same concept. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think it's good for us to be as aware as we can be to help each other out.
Yeah.
And to really just be aware of people around you, be aware of yourself, and do your work. Do the work and check in, gut checking yourself, and do the work and paying attention to your friends and loved ones, and help them, gut check them if you think they're going too far one way or another. Obviously, you want to be very, like I mentioned before, very cognizant of how you go about things, and how you say things makes a big difference, because you don't want to offend or insult someone. But on the flip side, you want to make sure that you're doing what you can to help.
Yeah. And
be a partner for them. So, well, with that being said, I think we're approaching an hour, aren't we?
Yep.
Yep, that's what I figured. Fortunately,
Nice.
It sounds like our time's coming to end, but if you want to continue the conversation with me, I'm very, 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 very excited to mention to you, I can't even talk, and I apologize, but contact me on Twitter, is what I'm trying to say. I want to hear from you. Jen's Crazy Life. I don't post very often, but I'm always there, and I'm always checking things. So please, please, please send me a message, and we can continue this conversation or talk about whatever you want to talk about. Love to hear from you. You can also reach out to us on the Crazy Life Podcast at Outlook.com or the Crazy Life Podcast.weebly.com. So either one, reach out to us, shoot us an email, shoot us a message. We'd love to hear from you. And Bryan, how can they reach you?
You can also find, I usually post when the new show goes out, I post on Twitter at the Crazy Life Pod. You can find me on Twitter at Stunami. You can find the other podcast I'm on, which is Salty Language, at salty_language or at saltylanguage.com. And yeah, I think that's it for that. Yep.
Cool. And Henno, how about you?
You can find me on Twitter at IdaHenno, IDAHENNO, and as always, contact us here on The Crazy Life, and we'd love to hear your feedback.
Absolutely. And Bryan, did you mention the wonderful, wonderful groups that we're associated with?
No, that's what I was going to do now. We're part of the Tangent Bound Network, and we're also part of Wicked Radio Network, so give them a visit and check out the other shows that are part of that, or part of those, I should say. And also, if you're looking for new podcasts, jump on Twitter and type #PodernFamily and go check out. There's all sorts of it's basically indie podcasters just helping each other promote, since we don't have the big promotion engines that like Podcast One and those kind of podcast groups have. So, go check out some of those. You might find some really interesting podcasts that way. Also, you can, I'm a mess too. I got thrown off by everything. I want to remind everybody we're not doctors, therapists, trained professionals of any kind. So if you need help, please go seek out a doctor or, professional help. Do not self-diagnose because it can be harmful. If you go to a doctor, you can get a good course of action and then, set out on a path to help you and your support group. And of course, if you're feeling that you have no alternative and you're thinking of committing suicide, please don't. Please call a suicide hotline number. Or call 911, tell them you're having a mental emergency, or call someone in your support group and have them take you to the hospital, or just don't be alone.
Absolutely. Keep in mind, everybody, as we've mentioned before, and I'll keep mentioning it, loneliness is a symptom, and it will feed your disease. So don't feed your disease. Don't let the loneliness consume you, and don't sink inside yourself. Reach out, get help, surround yourself with important people that will help you. So if you need any help we can help you with, let us know. We're here to listen. We're here to talk. So just reach out to us. So with that, everybody have a great week, and we will talk at you next week.